Recognize any of the locations in the photos? Okay, the answers will follow in some following slides. I haven't done much touring in New Mexico. In the early 60s, we drove from Tucson to Craig, Colorado. We drove through Santa Fe, but never had time to stop. And then I attended a conference in the 80s in Albuquerque and drove to Taos, but again on business and never had time to stop. So I've got a lot of sites on my bucket list, and I'll share those with you.
Taos is a fun place to visit.
Pardon?
Taos is a fun place.
Taos, yeah. Okay, for my research on Armijo's Travelway, I've developed a sightseeing bucket list. I've given up on the idea of a guidebook. I will start including some information from previous ICL classes, including traveling with smartphones. I presented a class on traveling with the iPhone. I've also had classes on recreational GPS, computer maps, Google Earth, touring the St. George landscape and landscape architecture of national parks. So my basic interest is in the landscape.
What's the paper map?
That's something we all should have, and it's free from the highway departments.
Most young people don't even know what it is.
Pardon?
Most young people
No.
don't even know what it is.
Well, as you can see under cautions, when we're using smartphones and we're looking for directions on how to get there, on pavement, I always recommend two opinions. Apple Maps and Google Maps are an example. When you're off pavement, I recommend at least three opinions, a couple of digital maps, routing, and also contact the local land management agency or who maintains the roads, because maps don't tell you how deep the ruts are, how deep the sand is, or whether the road's been washed out or closed. So it's always, when you travel with a smartphone, you have to take some precautions.
You need the map too in case you have to get into a dead area.
Right, and your battery dies. That's we can use some of these offline, and I'll talk about some offline alternatives. But the bottom line is always carry a paper map, because the battery can die. At the end of class, I'll provide a little more information on what these applications can do. So it's a survey of what's available. It's not instructions on how to do it. And if you're not interested, it gets a little technical, but it's only about 5 minutes. If you're not interested, please feel comfortable to leave. For online, I use Google Maps and Apple Maps. For offline, I use Google Maps, Avenza Maps, and I've got a Garmin application on my iPhone. Again, batteries die, so carry paper maps. Historical sites relate mostly to Spanish American and Native American history, not much about the travelers. Most of the sightseeing is off the shadow highways. Sites will be treated independently. Routing guides will not be provided. I'll give you map names, and you should be able to get directions to get there by using your smartphones for most locations. Here's an example. I put in Four Corners, New Mexico in Google Maps, and I searched, and a drop-down list came. I selected this option right here, and this screen came up. And this again is Google Maps, so now I can get directions as to how to get to Four Corners in New Mexico. And it also tells me from St. George it's about a 5.5 hour drive. Shadow highways are the red line. They parallel or coincide with Armijo's travelway, which is identified by circles at a 10-mile spacing. Map color shading indicates land ownership or federal land management designations. So shadow highways, by my definition, are those that are parallel or coincide to Armijo's travelway. These are the shadow highways going to Santa Fe within New Mexico. The red dots here are on the alignment for Armijo's travelway. So you can see it coincides pretty much in this area, and then it's offset probably 20 to 30 miles. Again, you can barely see the color shading, but the tan areas right here are Indian reservations. The darker green are wilderness areas. The lighter green are U.S. Forest Service, and there's a few yellow areas that are BLM. Landscape zones include the San Juan Basin, a transition zone between the Rocky Mountains and the Colorado Plateau, and the Rio Grande Riff. In a riff, the Earth's crust has been pulled apart. The Rio Grande River didn't create the valley, it follows the valley, it follows the riff. Pulling apart creates fractures through which magma can reach the ground surface, resulting in lava flows. So again, to start with right here, we've got the San Juan Basin. You can see the highlands that surround it. We've got a transition zone between the Colorado Plateau and the southern Rocky Mountains. And within this area here is the Rio Grande Riff. Again, this is an outline of the San Juan Basin. When something goes up, something else goes down. So there's been structural uplift, but as a consequence, there's also been some going down. And again, this is the outline, and you can see that from the shading right here that it's surrounded by uplifts. And again, this is the San Juan River, Farmington, Bloomfield, just to get you orientated. Where's the landscape scenery? Do you expect to see most of the scenery along the edges or the interior? At the edges, we can see there are several rock layers that are exposed to the surface, and they have differential erosion or different hardnesses and have different susceptibility to erosion along the edges right here. In the San Juan Basin, we will look at Four Corners, Shiprock, the Hogback, Aztec Ruins National Monument, and Salmon Ruins Museum. It's kind of a mystery. Again, this is the San Juan River right here, and Armijo went up this way here and then came back to the San Juan. And it's kind of a mystery why he didn't just follow the San Juan right here, as the highway did, and probably post-travelers after 1850 did. Four Corners, Shiprock, the Hogback, Salmon Ruins Museum, and then right up here, Aztec Ruins, right there. How many have not been to Four Corners? Okay. This location is managed by the Navajo Nation, which maintains souvenir stands. The flags represent the U.S., different states, and different tribes. So Four Corners, we have 4 different state flags, and the border between Colorado and New Mexico is also a tribal border between the Utes and the Navajos. And the flags represent different tribes and different states.
Where's all the tourists?
They was taken early in the morning.
Right. A sandstone marker was placed in 1875. 1912, a concrete pad protected the sandstone shaft. 1931, a brass disc marker was set in concrete. 1962, an elevated concrete pad was constructed around the brass marker. 1992, the monument is pretty much as we see it today, except for the visiting facilities, and they were reconstructed in 2010. State boundaries are set along whole numbers of longitude and latitude, but as we can see, Four Corners right here is located by decimal latitude and by decimal longitude. This 1 mile offset right here is caused by a survey error. 3,700 should be here, but they actually set the point here, and survey monuments control legal descriptions. So once they surveyed it, this is the latitude right here between the states. Another thing that happened was back in 1886, they set the Four Corners right here for territories, and it hasn't changed much from the states. But the territory corner was 37 degrees latitude and 32 degrees longitude. And at that time, they measured longitude relative to Washington, D.C. Back in around 1884, they changed the prime meridian from D.C. to Greenwich, England. And so you have an offset right here of about 2.5 miles from 109 is right about there. So that's why you have a decimal rather than whole numbers at this Four Corners. Okay, this is Shiprock. It's the most prominent landmark in northwest New Mexico. Navajos called it Winged Rock. A great bird brought the Navajo from the north to their present lands. It's an erosional remnant of the throat of a volcano. You can see intrusive dikes radiate out from the throat. You can see this location on Google Maps. And if you're driving down US 64, this is what you'll see from the highway. Hogback is a map name, but it's also a landform name. Have you heard of hogbacks before? It's a long, narrow ridge with steep slopes of nearly equal inclination on both flanks. So here's the steep, narrow ridge. And right here, can you see a coal mine? There's a coal mine right here. And in the San Juan Basin, there's a lot of hydrocarbons. So there's natural gas, there's oil, and there's coal within the San Juan Basin area. But in this location right here, there's looks like strip mining for coal right here. Cliff House sandstone is the armor layer which covers the softer rock. It probably was deposited as beach sand. The softer rock has been eroded. And where do you think Cliff House sandstone got its name? Well, before that, right here, this is the sandstone. Underneath the sandstone, it's been kind of rolled over, are the softer rocks, and they've been eroded out right here. But this is where Cliff House got its name from Mesa Verde. So this was a type location for that geologic layer. And again, right here we can see the Cliff House sandstone. We've got an alcove right here, and the alcove was formed by undercutting of the weaker layer. And this, well, I don't think this is going to become an arch because there's quite a bit of thickness in back of it. But they built the ruins right here in the alcove. Ancestral people lived there around 600 to 1300 AD, and the park was established in 1906. Cliff House sandstone extends from Mesa Verde to Chaco Canyon. Has anyone been to Chaco Canyon? Okay, Mesa Verde is here. I've kind of shaded the formation, Cliff House sandstone, with a darker brown. Right here, it's within the basin, so sandstone is kind of tipped on its edge. But over here in Mesa Verde, it's out of the basin, and the layer is flat line. But you can see it extends quite a distance. And Mesa Verde and Chaco Canyon is in the vicinity. Aztec Ruin National Monument. It was established in 1923. Google Maps provides driving directions, so all you have to do is search for Aztec Ruin National Monument. It's along the legislated trail alignment. Some things of interest to an engineer was how were the rocks shaped? They look natural in form right here, and is there mortar in between? So when I look at ruins, I like to look at the construction of the rockwork. This can be seen at the Aztecs ruins, and here's another example. Solomon ruins, they are ruins, a museum, reconstructed dwellings and habitation areas, and a preserved pioneer homestead. Habitation dates back to the 11th century. It's named after the homesteader who occupied this area, and driving directions are available. Again, enter Solomon ruins and you'll get directions on how to get there. We can see the museum here, and here's some replicas of dwellings that were reconstructed. This is the homestead area right here, and we have more ruins. It's just off, a short distance off of US 64. Now we've got getting out of the San Juan Basin, and we're going into the interior. We got from the edge, and now we're going into the interior of the basin. And again, US 550 is a shadow highway. Here is the alignment that Armijo traveled. There's not too much to see here. Along the road, there's Mausi Trading Post, Chaco Canyon, and Bisti Badlands. Has anyone been to Bisti? I think you might want to after you see some photos. Again, driving down US 550, there's not much scenery. So I probably would visit Chaco Canyon and Bisti Badlands. Here's Mausi Trading Post. Today it's probably not worth a stop. In the 60s, it sold 12 to 30-inch high images of spirits from an unseen world. And in the 60s, they cost $5. Today, they cost thousands. And the reason they're spirits is the Navajos carving human figures was taboo for the Navajos. Only the medicine men could. But again, it's located here. You might get a cold drink, but you won't probably buy any souvenirs of interest. The trading post, although it is a map name, it can't be located in Google Maps. Bistai da Nazin. Established in 1984, Bistai refers to large area of shale hills. Da Nazin takes its name from the Navajo words for cranes. You can get driving directions from Google Maps. And again, probably suggest they've got an office. It's a wilderness area, so there's not much development. So if you want information about the park and the roads, probably call the Farmington field office for the BLM. It's in Farmington. This is what you can see. River delta deposits along the shore of an inland sea, melting ice age waters from the mountain glaciers, exposed fossils, petrified wood, and eroded rock that form hoodoos. The erosion area is 200 to 400 feet below the surrounding plains. Lime deposits provide cemented erosion caps and soluble tubes. The ash, lignite beds, and clinkers account for colors including gray, black, and red. So this may not be iron oxide. This may actually be, they had some big fires, lignite, so they had a lot of vegetation, and they probably had some big fires in this area, and the red coloring, this could be clinkers. Again, I haven't been there, but, or it could be iron oxide, but it's a possibility. The gray right here is the volcanic ash. Here are some more photos of the area. There's horizontal layering, and the rocks are about 70 million years old. You see the petrified wood? So it's a pretty photogenic site.
Is all that gray volcanic ash?
Most of it is, yeah. Well, I think the lighter colors are. It's kind of hard from the shading. But there's also some fine grain deposits, some siltstones. A few parcels of private Navajo land are within the boundaries. Only developments are parking areas. It's about 20 miles to Chaco Canyon as the crow flies. So this right here is the outline of the wilderness area. It's color-coded for land ownership or land management. These areas right here are belong to tribes or Indian reservations. There's a couple of partial sections in here that belong to the Navajos. Yellow, again, is BLM, blue are state lands. And it's about 20 miles to Chaco Canyon. And I guess one of you have been to Chaco Canyon. Mayra, remember Mayra? He was the mapper that went along with Dominguez and Escalante. Mayra identified Chaco Canyon on his map. We can see the cliff house sandstone rock layer in the background. Between 1850 and 1150 AD, Chaco Canyon served as a major center of ancestral Puebloan culture. There is a visitor center and campground. Possible access to and from Shadow Highway US 550 to the north, but it's by county unpaved roads. And directions are available from Google Maps. So right here is the Cliff House Sandstone Formation. Chaco Canyon people were known for building straight roads. They didn't follow the contour. And sometimes these roads were 30 feet wide, but they built straight roads. And maybe they migrated along azimuths, astronomical azimuths, or in straight lines. As we can see, the alignment right here of Hovenweep, Mesa Verde, Aztec, Salmon, and we'll talk about Bandelier National Monument, but it's pretty much along this line here. We also see a straight line here. This is pretty much north and south. Aztec ruins, Salmon, and Chaco Canyon. So they built straight roads and maybe they traveled along straight lines. This is the transition zone between the southern Rocky Mountains. This is kind of a division line. And the Colorado Plateau. And Armijo's travelway pretty much coincides with New Mexico State Route 96 in this area right here. This right here is actually within the southern Rocky Mountains. It's 200 million year old sediments. These are 70 million year old sediments. But they're at a lower elevation than the older sediments. And this is within the San Juan Basin area right here, or Colorado Plateau. And this is, with the uplift right here probably is within the southern Rocky Mountains. So that can explain the difference why older rocks are at higher elevations than younger rocks. Again, State Route 96, Armijo's travelway. Abiquiu Reservoir is right here. The 200 million year old rocks are fairly flat in their layering. And we can see this from the highway. SR 96 also passes through National Forest. Most of the historical sites associated with the Spanish Trail in New Mexico are within the Rocky Mountains between Santa Fe and Abiquiu. Remember, Armijo started his journey in Abiquiu. The green labels show high potential sites for national trail promotion. The yellow labels show tentative potential sites. The white labels show sites I've added because of personal interest. The brown shaded areas are volcanics that are less than 8 million years old. And we have a caldera here, and we've got some ash flows here. And so the eruption here pretty much was similar to what happened in St. Helens. Remember all the ash and the ash flows in St. Helens? Well, it's kind of a similar situation here, but it was 8 million years ago, 1 million years ago for these ash flow deposits here. And the other thing we have to keep in mind is that things occur over a period of time. So we have a reference age, but volcanics happen in this area between 8 and 1 million years, so over a period of time. And we'll try and look at each of these sites individually. Again, I've shaded the volcanics right here brown, so we can see the extent of volcanics. And Santa Fe is our reference location right here. Abiquiu is right here. So Armijo started here, but the other Spanish trails started in Santa Fe, and I'm sure Armijo got a lot of his goods from Santa Fe. Rocky Mountains were formed 40 to 7 million years ago by compressional forces pushing together. The orange color shows the volcanic cap. So these are the volcanic flows over here that cap one of the Rocky Mountains. In a rift zone, the earth crust has been pulled apart. The Rio Grande Riff extends from middle Colorado into Mexico. It started about 25 to 30 million years ago, peaked around 10 to 15 million years ago, and today it's still pulling apart. About 2 millimeters per year, which is about a little over 1 mile per million years. The river followed the Rift Depression. Blocks dropped down, resulting in basins. The basin and range is also a rift zone where pulling apart has occurred. And this pulling apart along the Rio Grande has developed also some basins in these areas here. Pulling apart also creates fractures, so the magma can reach the ground surface. And so with these fractures, magma can come up, and that's why you frequently have volcanics along or within rift zones, because the pulling apart has opened up the earth, and the magma can flow to the ground surface. This plaza has been the commercial, social, political center of Santa Fe since 1610. An 1868 war memorial monument is at its center. Several markets surround the plaza. It's a Spanish Trails high potential site for promotion. And you can input Santa Fe Plaza into Google Maps and you'll get driving directions. 1878 photo. You can see the monument right here. The plaza is in close proximity to several other historical sites and government offices. Santa Fe is the capital of the state. So we have state offices here, state library, here's the capitol. The plaza is right here. And there are several historical sites of interest within the surrounding area. So if you go to Santa Fe, that's probably a recommended location, or at least it's first on my list. Camel Rock is a landscape landmark a few miles north of Santa Fe. It's a tentative Spanish Trail promotional site, and it can be located in Google Maps. We don't get driving directions, but if you get within the area and look at Google Maps, you can see that it has been, there is a dot there showing its location. It consists of soft sandstone. And about 15 or 20 years ago, its nose fell. So that's probably what we'll see today. This is the road view from US 84. There's a parking area. And you can walk up for a closer view. Spanish for Flint Hill. Cerro refers to mountain or hill. One of the most recognized landmarks in north central New Mexico. It's also on Mayer's map. It's capped by 8-million-year-old lava flows. Georgia O'Keeffe, I've asked this before, but anyone familiar with Georgia O'Keeffe's? Painted it often, and her ashes were actually scattered on its top. It can be located on Google Maps, but again, no driving directions. This is kind of a close-up of the lava flows, 8-million-year-old lava flows right here. Armijo Reservoir. And this is US 84. This is the highway view you can see right here. These ruins included a large Navajo pueblo with over 700 ground floor rooms surrounding 2 large plazas and a large Kia. It can be seen by climbing a steep, scenic half-mile trail. There are 2 vista areas viewing the Charma Valley and several interpretive signs along the way. It can be located on Google Maps. But take a look at the sign, because you'll see more of the ruins on the sign than you will see on the ground. It's actually just an overview of where the ruins existed at one time. And you can see the reference point right here. It's a historic house museum in Abiquiu, New Mexico. It's on the National Register of Historic Places. It was occupied by Georgia O'Keeffe from 1945 until 1984. She died in 1986 at the age of 98. It's a tentative Spanish Trail promotional site. Driving directions are available in Google Maps. And be careful when you search, because there's also a museum, a Georgia O'Keeffe Museum in Santa Fe. This is an example of her artwork. This is her residence right here, historical marker. First built in 1773, rebuilt after 1867 fire from a candle on the altar, rebuilt after 1937 to be more functional. Tentative Spanish Trail promotional site, and no directions are available in Google Maps. But I'm sure there are signs in Abiquiu. Bandelier National Monument, about 1 hour northwest from Santa Fe. Brown shaded area is covered by volcanics. The Bandelier Tuff is an ash flow that resulted from an eruption of the caldera around 1 million years ago. Again, this eruption was similar to Mount St. Helens. So we can kind of see the ash flows. Can you see the change in topography? How closely spaced the drainages are? So this is the Bandelier Tuff right here. And you can kind of pick it out by a change in the drainage patterns and topography. Here's the National Monument here. And there's the road you would take from Santa Fe. And what they did was they actually carved out the soft tuft and built some dwellings. The ancestral Pueblo people lived here around 1150 AD. The dwellings were carved into the Bandelier tuft. The firmer materials were used as bricks. Became national monument in 1916. In 1932, administration changed from the U.S. Forest Service, which surrounds the area, to the National Park Service. Over 70% of the monument is wilderness. 3 miles of road and more than 70 miles of hiking trails. It's named after Adolf Bandelier, who was a Swiss-American anthropologist. And you can get directions in Google Maps. So I think probably the National Monument came before the geologic formation name, because it was named after Bandelier, who was a person. Shuttle service is available during the tourist season. Black Mesa can be seen from the Shadow Highway, US 84, and can be located on Google Maps. Remember inverted valleys from St. George? It's an inverted valley right here. So the surrounding areas have been eroded away. These other examples of inverted valley are Airport Ridge and Middleton Ridge, or Four Master Ridge. Again, this is a close-up right here of Black Mesa. And just for reference, this is the location of Camel Rock, and the dots are Armijo's travelway. And there's Abiquiu, where he started. About 25 miles north of Santa Fe, built between 1733 and 1748. For defense, it was commonplace that settlers clustered their homes around the church to form a plaza. It's a Spanish Trails high potential promotional site. It's located in Santa Cruz, but no Google Map directions. So if you get to Santa Cruz, look for the signs. Nambe, Pueblo, 18 miles north of Santa Fe. Indian name loosely interpreted as rounded earth. A previous dwelling may have been on a mound. Word Pueblo stems from the Spanish word for village. Was settled in the earlier part of the 14th century. Cliff dwellers may have migrated to the Pueblos along the Rio Grande because of a drought. It is known for painted pottery. Many Pueblo Indians are nominally Catholic. It is a Spanish Trails high potential promotional site. Google Maps will find the town, but not the Pueblo. So there's actually 8 Pueblos in the vicinity of the Rio Grande, but the National Historic Trails study only identified 4 as high potential for promotion. Pohaki means water gathering place, 15 miles north of Santa Fe. During 1934, 14 Pohaki people reclaimed the land and established the residence and reservation at the present location. First Spanish mission was founded there. There is a cultural center, museum, luxury resort that features 2 casinos that display a collection of museum-quality Native American fine art. It is a Spanish Trails high potential promotional site. Google Maps will find the Pueblo, but not the town. So you can see the casino right here. And again, the Pueblos are adobe buildings. Tasuki, 10 miles north of Santa Fe, refers to village of the narrow place of the cottonwood trees. Present location since the 1200s, one of New Mexico's smallest pueblos. Operates the Camel Rock Casino. Spanish Trails high potential promotional site. Again, Google Maps will find the town, but not the Pueblo. San Ildefonso, 23 miles north of Santa Fe, named after 7th century Archbishop of Toledo, refers to where the water cuts through, famous for black on black pottery. It is a Spanish Trail high potential promotional site. Google Maps will find the town, not the Pueblo. Next week, we'll look at sightseeing along the Arizona-Utah border, shadow highways. We'll get a little bit into smart maps. These are the applications I have on my iPhone. I've got Apple Maps, Google Maps, Avenza Maps, and these are all free. I also have a Garmin application that I paid $50 for, but it's no longer supported or distributed because I figured Garmin figured out they were losing a lot of business by selling GPSs by having this application, but it works very similar to a Garmin Street GPS. Again, this is an example. Google Maps can be used offline, so you don't have to have an internet connection. And you come up with a screen here in Google Maps, and you go to this drop-down menu here, you click it, and then you get an option for offline maps, which you select. But in order to save Google Maps offline, you have to have a Google account. I think if you have a Google email, you probably have a Google account. And you just use the same username and same password to sign in. Again, I selected offline maps, and if you select custom map option, this screen comes in up here. And this is the area that can be saved. So you change the amount of area by pinching in and pinching out, by changing the scale, or zooming in and zooming out. So in this example right here, it tells you that if I downloaded this area for offline use, it'd be about 1.8 megabytes. And I've got plenty of storage still left on my iPhone. Avenza Maps, has anyone heard of that? Okay. It's to be used offline. Again, you need to create an account, but it doesn't cost anything, and there are a lot of maps that are free. And it does not provide driving directions. It displays maps, but it shows your GPS location on a map. And it's available both on Android and iPhone. So this is it's a digital copy of the Utah highway map. And by clicking a button right here, this is where I was located when I looked at the map. So the nice thing about this is it shows you your GPS location on the map. And what I've done is and it's a free download from Avenza. I also have the Arizona highway map, Chaco Culture National Historic Park, the Nevada highway map, New Mexico highway map, and Santa Fe downtown. So it displays a map and shows you your location, your GPS location, because your GPS is built into your smartphone. Again, you go down to the online store and it displays a screen right here, and all these icons show maps for the point areas that are available. Some they charge for, but a lot of them are free. Most USGS topographic maps are free and can be downloaded here. What you do is to begin with is you click this icon here. It gets you within the vicinity of where you are, and then you can see what maps are available from the store in this area. But to see to access the store, you have to be online. So you got to do your homework before you take your trip.
And that's in Avenza?
Yes, that's in Avenza. This quickly is my Garmin app, but you can see the interface is pretty much the same as a Garmin Street Map, and it operates the same. I like it as a backup to Google Maps. I also carry my GPS Street Garmin with me as a backup. And I use it primarily it can be used for coordinates. So what you can do is you can search for cities, for intersections, and for addresses in Garmin, but you can't search for map names in Garmin. So I find out the coordinates for a map name, and then I can input it into this Garmin application. It will take me to the coordinates, which will be the location of the map name. Okay, everyone totally confused. Anyone want to go to New Mexico? There's a lot to see, isn't there? Okay, next week, Utah, Arizona borderland.